Okay, we'll accept the motion to adjourn the meeting. Just kidding. Nolan, you're up. It's your turn.
Thank you very much. Since we met last, the County Council had one of our last general meetings and sessions at Forest Hill on February 7th, where we had the privilege of hearing Mrs. Whitfield speak and be our keynote speaker. May I say, it was one of my favorites of the year so far, and I actually took away a lot personally, so I'm very thankful for that. Since then as well, I've been waiting on the next step and hearing back from the board on the resolution we presented last meeting on the emergency telephone, so we're looking very forward to seeing the progression of that. Also in the County Council, we've been talking about, sadly for me, talking about our upcoming elections. That's it, okay, you know. Other than that, I'd like to say I'm very proud of all the student governments in the county because there was a tremendous amount of work and effort putting in to events in remembrance of the Marjory Stoneman tragedy. It was something that all the student governments felt very strongly about, and I'm very happy all the work that was put in to remember that. I know at Park Vista alone, we adopted 17 Eagles in honor of the 17 students and held an entire week of events in honor of them, and I'm very proud of that. And that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ursuig. Committee reports, Academic Advisory Committee. Nolan, you want to go home now? Okay. Got your homework done? Okay.
Good evening, Chairman Barbieri, school board members, Dr. Fenoy, and staff. This month, our committee heard a presentation from Chief Kitsero about safety measures that have been taken in our schools and future plans for safety. He mentioned the key elements include prevention, intervention, diversion, communication, crisis response, reunification, recovery, safety, and security. Chief Kitsero also discussed the threat assessment team at each school and the threat assessment instrument that is used. The committee members appreciated the efforts by the staff to coordinate with the mental health resources at the schools and in the communities. During the Deputy Superintendent's update, we heard that there have been 185 referrals to the crisis assessment prevention evaluation teams and about 1,500 referrals to the community partner agencies. And the committee was very impressed with these efforts and how much has been worked on. Also, during the update, we heard about the governor's executive order regarding the education standards and the related changes that will be required. There are questions about the timing of the textbook adoptions for math and literature as a result of these changes, possible changes. A committee member asked about plans to include training for teachers and the steps that will be needed to ensure that students won't have gaps in their education due to these new standards that we don't know yet what they will be. Committee members also asked questions about teachers and principals evaluations in the schools, especially focusing on the schools where there were few or no highly effective teachers rated that way, and the schools that have all or nearly all highly effective teachers. So it's both ends of the spectrum to be focusing on that. And concern was also expressed about how this impacts the morale at the schools. In January, the committee heard a presentation about the development of the master planning regarding courses offered at schools and equitable access to these courses. There were questions about the expansion of the AVID program, which now includes 16 elementary schools, and the AMP program. A committee member also asked about the lack of STEM classes in some areas of our district and schools, and raised the concern that this is indicative of an inequitable access to classes which could help prepare students for STEM careers. For example, AP Computer Science A is offered only in 5 high schools in our district this school year. And it's that class that teaches students how to program in Java, which would be great for their future careers, but only 5 of our 22 schools actually offer that class. And in the GLADE, students can access upper-level math courses such as calculus through dual enrollment. However, they don't have access to those classes in their high school, like many of our other schools in the district actually do. The committee also discussed the AMP program and how it is preparing students starting in elementary school to be able to succeed in these advanced math courses once they reach high school. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Feldman. The audit committee has submitted a written report that's attached to the agenda, and that takes us to Mr. Doctor Cork.
Good evening, Chairman Barbieri. I thought everybody was here to see me tonight. Board members, Dr. Fenoy. My name is Lou Doctor. I'm representing your Cork, your Construction Oversight and Review Committee. We had 12 items on our agenda to review, and I wanted to make a comment about it before I go through specifics. The package we received were very well prepared. The data was complete. It was accurate. It was informative. And it was certainly worthwhile and a joy to go over the information. The 12 packages is not unusual because we're moving through the sales tax money and putting through the necessary papers and documents in order to get them approved. So I'm briefly going to go through the 12 packages. They were all approved, but there are a few highlights that I just wanted to mention with you. In terms of PC1 construction purchasing, as you know, we qualify 1 new vendor and 3 renewal vendors, and that moved forward on consent. Design services for Addison Meisner Elementary School modernization moved through on consent. PC3 construction management at risk for Addison Meisner Elementary School modernization moved through on consent. Construction management at risk for the Adult Education Center Second Amendment. In response to a question from the Cork, staff informed us that an agreement had been reached with the surrounding municipalities. There was an issue in terms of fencing. There were some objections from the community. They didn't want it built in their area. It was very successfully resolved by communication with your staff, and they're all in agreement, and that's moving forward. In terms of PC5 design services for Washington Elementary School modernization, your staff resolved the cost per student station issue at that school. It looked like we couldn't build the school with the cost per student station forced upon us, and we can't afford to miss the cost per student station because the penalties associated with that are exorbitant and outrageous, but that's not an issue we can solve. Working with your staff and their support people, they came up with a solution. It meets the cost per student station, and therefore this design services contract is moving forward. That was recommended by a vote of 10-0. Construction management at risk for Washington Elementary School modernization. Your staff noted that the demolition costs to rip down a facility are also included in the cost per student station. It isn't just the construction of the new facility. That was recommended to go forward by a vote of 10-0. On PC 7 through 11, we recommended they all go forward with one minor correction. Some of the lawyers on our committee, and I've referred to them in the past, recommended an elimination of one paragraph because they felt it was a duplication, and in reading the contract, you could assume that a contractor could get paid twice for doing the same job. So to eliminate any possible confusion, we recommended it be removed. However, we suggested the contracts go forward as is and that your staff consider a minor amendment to the awarded contract to pick up the differences. No sense in reviewing and revising the contract and resubmitting it and go through the whole process. So I thought that was a good suggestion, and your staff was more than in agreement. In terms of, so PC 7, 8, 9, 10 recommended they all go forward. On PC 11, facility renovation and repair for Jupiter Elementary School and Pahokee Elementary School. Cork had several questions, and the answers were interesting. We questioned why the two schools were packaged together rather than separate contracts. And the staff responded they're trying to get a variety of contractors at low level and high levels to bid and get opportunities to do the work rather than giving the work in one big package to one school. So a smaller contractor could bid on these two schools and get work out of us rather than forcing everything in big packages to one contractor. That was a good response to what we asked. We also noted there were issues with the Jupiter Elementary School. That might not apply to Pocahontas. And your staff replied, they're going to be separate contracts for each school, independent of the one contractor the contractor will be bidding on, so they'll be able to handle them separately. And the final one was an amendment to the sanitary sewer connection at Jupiter Farms. We've used a packaged sewer plant there for years, and it's now putting out contamination. It can't be fixed. It's old, it's obsolete, and it needs to be removed. So this is a proposal to tie in with the Waxahachie sewer main line. They figured out a new path that reduces the distance for the pipeline by some 40%. At the same time this has been under negotiation discussions, costs have increased from the industry and from the workers, and we feel that it's appropriate that this move forward now. We recognize there's some opposition from the community. No community that's on a septic system likes to have a sewer line put in because of the impact and cost of what it would take to tie in on the line. So there's a 10-year moratorium that nobody's going to be forced to tie in on the line, but the line will be there if people want to put in it at the later date, and hopefully they'll resolve the cost issue. But it's something that's important that we move forward, and now's the time to do it, and we recommended that go forward without exception. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Shaw.
My question, Mr. Doctor, is for Ms. Rico. The items that Mr. Doctor just talked about, PC 7 through 11, is it appropriate, do we need to take action tonight to authorize that paragraph change be taken out, because it was suggested?
That'd be certainly appropriate, so that
Right.
those changes can go forward after you approve it.
Mrs. Paul, my understanding is you already made that change to the contract? In the contracts that are attached have been modified already?
Yes, sir. They have been modified.
Okay, thank you.
There are 3 or 4 words. It's not a big deal.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Doctor. And we appreciate all the work, because I know that the administration is keeping you pretty busy with all the projects going on, so thank you for your
We're
work.
pleased at the response we're getting from your staff, and they deserve to be complimented for the work they're putting in for this. And that's both the staff and the consultants that you brought along, which is a good way to get this volume happened in a cost-efficient and timely manner.
Did the COO ask you to make that comment, Mr. Doctor?
They twisted my arm. Thank you.
Deputy Superintendent Oswald, you weren't dozing off there, were you? No. Okay, keep your head up there so we can make sure you're awake. Okay, that'll take us to the elected officials and delegates. Mr. Gavrilis from Our Education Foundation, Charmaine Postal from the Palm Beach County PTA, and Jacqueline Calloway from the Coalition for Black Student Achievement. Would you please come up to the microphones?